Welcome to the DNA show.
DNA? Dude, are we doing a science show?
No, D is for Dennis.
Oh, A is for Andy.
And N is for and?
Oh, man, nerds. Because we're
yeah.
nerds, dude.
Yeah. Well, good. Then we can talk about comics and movies and pop culture and sports.
Sports. Sports and nerds. Yeah, we're going to make that work.
All right, let's roll.
Hey, welcome to the Dennis and Andy Show. I'm Andy with my buddy.
And I'm Dennis, back again.
We are back. I know you missed us. I know it. I know you go to sleep every night going, why don't they do this daily? They only do it once a week.
And that's just not enough.
It's really not. But, you know, that's what gets you coming back. We just like to dangle it out there and have you swat it like a cat and his toy, just taking whacks at it.
Yep, and we appreciate the feedback that we get and things that you all want to talk about. Just leave your comments, on our Facebook page. Probably the easiest. You can email us, but just make sure you're following us in there and shoot us anything that you want to have discussed.
That's right. The email is thedennisandandy@yahoo.com.
Yep.
So feel free to drop us a line. We actually did get an email, and the email actually it was asking us to talk about a show that just dropped on Netflix that I actually watched when it was on regular TV 2 years ago, and now it's catching all the buzz. And Dennis, they want us to talk about Waco. Our thoughts on Waco. So Dennis, you just watched it.
I did. Just finished it, actually, and I did not watch it when it originally aired. But because we're all stuck in our houses right now, what are we going to do? We're going to watch Netflix. And what wound up trending on Netflix? Waco. And it wound up, it was ranked in the top 10. So,
was it really?
Yep, it was. It showed right up on the main page. So I asked my wife, I said, hey, I can always let the Ozarks slide for a little bit here because I got to get caught up on that. And I says, but really kind of watch Waco because everybody's been kind of talking about it. So like Tiger King, it's kind of taken us by buzz because we're all stuck in the house.
Now, like I said, I actually watched it because it came out in 2018 and it was on, don't quote me on this, but it was on a TNT USA network. It was on one of those networks back then. And I remember the previews back then and it really piqued my interest because, it happened in 1993. In 1993, I was like 22, 23 years old. I didn't care about stuff like that. It was just a blip. What 22-year-old's rushing home at night after work going, I got to turn on the nightly news?
Right.
Nobody.
Right.
So I vaguely remember the headline and Janet Reno and, Clinton and whatever. So I watched it. My memory's not as fresh because, like I said, I haven't watched it since 2 years ago, but Dennis just did watch it, so we'll talk about it, and my memory will be refreshed.
Well,
so what was your take on it?
I thought it was very well done. It had a great cast, so that's one of the reasons why I kind of wanted to see it. Michael Shannon wound up playing Gary, who was the FBI negotiator who was in charge of it.
And he was kind of the good guy out of the FBI.
Yeah, he wanted to see a peaceful resolution with it. He figured he could do something, and that wound up, obviously, they didn't follow his lead.
Yeah.
Taylor Kitsch played David Koresh. For me, I was like, oh, it's Gambit. Yeah.
See, for me, it was Friday Night Lights. That's what I remember Taylor Kitsch from, is Friday Night Lights, the TV show.
Yep.
Who he was fantastic in. The thing, and I do remember him as Gambit, but once again, Michael Shannon, Zod.
Yeah, well,
So
exactly.
Two hero, well, one's a villain, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But the thing that Taylor Kitsch, I thought, did a fantastic job.
Yeah, I thought he did a really good job.
But the thing that was weird to me, I guess, is his physical transformation from the standpoint of he was in Friday Night Lights, played a high school jock football player, so he was in really good shape.
Yep.
Then he goes Gambit, once again, superhero, really good shape. And we're not talking like Chris Hemsworth buff, but really good shape. But for David Koresh, he had to thin out a lot.
Yes. And I know he lost a lot of weight for the role. He looked the part. I thought he did great.
Seeing like after I watched it a couple years ago, it just took me down a rabbit hole where I watched YouTube documentaries on it and seeing the real David Koresh, he just home run, knocked it out of the park.
Yeah.
I would just find it hard that if I got to really good shape, like muscle wise and stuff like he was, and then it was like, okay, yeah, you look good, but we really need you to thin out and just get, gone. I'd be like, really?
Yeah.
Do I really want to lose? I'm looking good right
Yeah, but
now.
That's how committed you are. It always reminds me of Christian Bale when he did The Mechanic, and he lost that where he went like super thin and anorexic, and that was just like, wow, some people are willing to do that for their roles, and
you flash the green.
Yeah, I suppose.
I'm willing to do it, I guess.
As long as they help you back from the path.
Yeah, they're not.
Yeah.
Once filming's over, they're like, you want to look like that again, go hire your own personal trainer.
Yeah, I mean, Rory Culkin, he winds up playing David Thibodeau, and which I thought, and one of the Culkins.
The better actor.
Yeah. But it was, he did an interesting because he wound up, when this was all done, he wrote a book. Gary wound up writing a book. And between those books and then all of the information they put together, this is where this actually derived from, was based off of their two novels.
Now refresh us. What was David Thibodeau's character in the movie? Because like I said, it's been 2 years.
Well,
he was in the compound.
So he wasn't originally in the compound. They had gone off to go play in a band, and the drummer didn't show up, and he's a drummer. So he was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" He goes, "Going out." And he goes, "You got anything else to do? Why don't you play with us?" Well, he didn't wound up having a place to stay that was close by. So at that point, he was like, well, David was like, why don't you come back? We don't even have running water. It's not much, but we got free beds. It's close by. It's good. And he wound up being attached and wound up staying with him till almost the bitter end.
But he didn't. Oh, wait. He did have a love interest in it. Wasn't it Julie Garner's character or no?
Yeah. Yeah, so he wound up because when the FBI had infiltrated him, the interesting thing was they could get him for either marrying her too young because she was way underage, even for Texas, but because he was already married, and he was married to Supergirl, Melissa Benoist.
And so many superheroes in this movie. Supergirl, Zod, Gambit.
Kneel before Zod. Can't help it. So yeah, he wound up writing a book because he wound up surviving and he wanted to be there, but he also knew that it was a dead end. It was just a really good. And Julia Garner, I mean, I thought she was very interesting because, I'm watching Ozark with her in it right now. Sure. And she's so powerful and dominant, and she's got the southern drawl, and it's just amazing. She's a completely opposite character in this. So I was like, wow, just kind of taken aback at how good she was in this.
In Waco, she played Michelle Jones. She was a very, you're right, very opposite, very timid, which... Yeah, I mean, you're an actor. That's what you have to do, play these different roles. But, my first experience with noticing her was the first season of Ozark.
Yeah.
So, it's not like after the show was over, I started Googling her and seeing anything about her. I just assumed, could be her real accent. In fact, I can't even tell you I don't know if in real life she has an accent or not that's like really discernible. You know what I mean? Like, is she really beefing it up for Ozark? Or is this how she really sounds like?
Which one is her natural?
Exactly. Yeah. Which I think is awesome. I love seeing actors that aren't huge names so you can really get into it. And that goes to the body transformation with Taylor Kitsch playing, David Koresh. He did thin out so much you almost had to do that double take like, was that the dude that played Gambit?
Right.
Was that the dude from... Now, Michael Shannon, not much of a stretch. As soon as he came on, you're like, oh, good casting. Michael Shannon's awesome.
Yes. Just a great actor.
But you're right. Getting just back to the Waco story, Michael Shannon really wanted to do the right thing. He wanted to wait him out because he really was making that connection with Koresh. And basically, his bosses or whatever came in and yanked them out and said, nah, man, we're done. We're not waiting this out anymore. It's been this amount of time. We're rolling in. We're taking this guy's down. And like I said, as a 23-year-old, when it happened, I was like, wow, that's pretty bad. The place burned down, the deaths and stuff.
See, Mitch was more shoot first, ask questions later. And he was all about going in, showing force, and they made a number of references. Now, what's interesting, it'll be interesting to find out, if you were to read the books and other things that were on there, did this take any advantage one way or another of upplaying or downplaying certain aspects of it? But yeah, Mitch was about, we're out, the police are outgunned in the country and we need to show force. Whereas Michael Shannon's character was like, hey, we can talk him down off this cliff. We can just walk. Because realistically, they did so very little wrong for them to bring that in the first place. And you kind of felt sympathy for him, going in.
Because what I kind of got from it is, okay, there's definitely the underage stuff with Koresh and basically bringing in couples and then telling the husband basically, you should not be sleeping with your wife. I'll take that burden on. You don't need to worry about burdening yourself with that anymore. It's okay. That's definitely skeezy.
Yes.
Totally. But
very cult leader-esque.
Very cult leader-esque, which he was. But so that's one aspect of why the feds want to get in. And another aspect was them out of guns and stuff. But then I think about how many people were there of law-abiding age that were allowed to own weapons, and how many weapons were there. So, basically what I'm saying is, let's say there was 100 people that were allowed, to own guns, right, in the compound. And let's say there were 500 guns.
Yep.
So that's 5 guns per person, right? If I'm doing my math right, 5 times 500. 5 guns per person. Okay, well, I already know people that own that many guns and are law-abiding citizens and stuff, and they weren't at Waco. They weren't using them in an offensive way.
Right.
They weren't going out we've got these guns, let's go. They weren't. Well, they were definitely a cult, but they weren't going out robbing banks and stuff. And
they weren't even showing them.
No.
And the FBI had heard that they had been accumulating them. Right. So they sent in the FBI agent named Jacob to try and infiltrate and become a rancher.
Yeah.
And he obviously knew nothing about ranching, and they caught onto that right away. But David Koresh was like, well, I can turn him. It's fine. You come on in. He never saw the guns. Nope. He never saw anything that was in there, nor did he see anything that would make them go, yeah, we need to come in here. So he was actually trying to wave them off when they decided, well, we're going to roll in with the, ATF agents, and they had him in like cattle trucks, cattle wagons. Coming in, he's actually drives out, wait a minute, don't do this, don't do this. There's no reason to do it. But nope, we're just going to go on in and just show who we are.
Right. When they could have easily, and I think there was a point in the movie, wasn't there a point in the movie where Michael Shannon's character, Gary, was basically trying to say, look, we can just, when Koresh comes out to make a grocery store run or something, why don't we just arrest him right then?
Right.
On the charges of...
and he and his son went jogging every morning. They literally come right up to the front door almost.
So wasn't his character, that FBI agent, trying to make the case of, why don't we just arrest him?
Right. If you really think they're doing something, and then they kept telling him, even during that meeting, well, you need to find something. I'm working on it, but there's nothing there. Well, it's there. I hear what you're saying, but I haven't been able to find it. They're not showing it. They're not doing anything wrong that I can actually see, but your reports are telling you something different. Yeah. So this was definitely a heavy-handed, moment.
Yeah, it's definitely, it was definitely sketchy, and I think there were definitely issues on both sides, I mean, once again, I'm not one for blanket statements, so I'm not going to be like, FBI, they're all bad, because they're not.
Right.
But things were handled things were mishandled.
Right.
And I don't know. If you're curious about Waco and what went down, I think this is a really good movie. I watched a few documentaries after this with interviews and piecing those together with this. It seems like this movie did a really good job of telling the story.
Yeah, and I would say did the same kind of thing. And, CS gas was used. And, they did a nice job at the very end of the movie going through the history. I knew some of the references they were talking about, but not all of them. I didn't know there were that many. Or, hey, tear gas was used here. Fire ensued. People died. And they just went through a timeline every single time they used it. So his point was mistakes were made. But as the FBI, wouldn't you have at least, you knew this was a probability. So if you're going to use it and you know that a fire could break out, at least have a plan to immediately put out the fire.
Right.
And that just wasn't part of it. So anyway, just very interesting. I'll be curious, from the historians out there for them to look. Did they take one side too much or the other, or was it very even-handed in their portrayals?
Yeah. I mean, it was, once again, it was a definite tragedy. I don't really care that David Koresh offed himself or the other guy. Who knows? It's still up in the air whether David Koresh killed himself or this other dude, Steve, did it.
Right. That was part of the trivia was they had to kind of interpolate what actually happened because nobody knows what happened to David or Steve in there. They just showed what they had talked about during the show. Right. Shoot me.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely not losing sleep over the fact David Koresh wasn't around anymore after 1993.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyhow.
So we thought now would be a good time to move into comic books.
That's right, because, Zod, Gambit, Supergirl, all in Waco. So what the heck? Let's talk some comics.
Yeah, let's do that.
So I talked to some of my artist friends, and one of the things we talk about is, favorite artist growing up, what period of time did you discover this book, so on and so forth. And it got me thinking, like, when I think of, for instance, The Incredible Hulk, it was a book I grew up reading in the 80s, loved it. Well, there's been numerous artists over the years that have worked on The Incredible Hulk. The first artist was Jack Kirby. He created the character with Stan Lee. But that was way before my time, way before Dennis's time.
Yep.
When I got onto the book, the artist on the book was a guy by the name of Sal Buscema. So when I think Hulk, and when I think the epitome of who is the artist, who's the vision that comes to my mind thinking of the Incredible Hulk, it's Sal Buscema's Hulk. Because every artist has a different style.
Yep.
So if you line up what Jack Kirby's Hulk looked like compared to Sal Buscema's, compared to Herb Trimpe, who had a long run on the book, they all look different. I mean, you can tell it's the green big muscle guy, but they're all uniquely that artist's own. Just like if I drew the Hulk, it would be my version.
Right.
So for me, my version of the Hulk, when I think of him, is Sal Buscema. So Dennis, Incredible Hulk. Who is the artist you most think of with the Incredible Hulk?
So what's interesting is I don't have one. I actually have two. And I read Incredible Hulk on and off throughout my entire collecting career. But the two that always stick out in my mind, it would be Dale Keown's run.
Oh, yeah.
Which it's, to me, there's just so many parts of that which I just really fell in love with. And then Todd McFarlane's run. And I know Todd McFarlane is well more known for, Spider-Man and obviously Spawn, the creator of Spawn.
Oh, yeah.
But his thing, Hulk 340. So, and again,
is that the one on the cover with the Wolverine popping the claws?
Yeah, me and an X-Men guy. That cover is probably my favorite of all time for any of the Incredible Hulks. I already love this story, but yeah, so the claws are up and you can see the reflection. It's just an awesome cover. So whenever I think of Hulk, those are the two that stand out for me.
I get that. For me, besides Sal, if I was to go number two, it'd be Herb Trimpe. I did love Dale's run. I did like Todd's as well. Obviously that's where I discovered Todd, even though he did work for DC first, and then the Hulk, and then from there Spider-Man. I would put Dale above Todd just because I like, style-wise, Dale's art just spoke to me more as an aspiring artist. Here's my question though, because you are the expert grader when it comes to comics and stuff, and know value and stuff. The one, so 340, that's the one with the Wolverine on the cover.
Yep.
With the claws pop. Is that worth something just because of that cover?
Yes.
It's just because of that cover. There's nothing story-wise that makes it special?
There's nothing super unique about it's a good story, don't get me wrong. Yeah. It's a solid book all the way around. But that cover is what triggers people.
That's what makes it worth money.
So when you're at the convention, it's when you put your wall up, right, and then people start looking through it. You always put your good books up on the wall.
Of course.
And then for them to look at. That book is always, even if people aren't looking particularly for that book, that stands out, and they'll be like, oh, the Hulk or Wolverine. If they're true collectors, they'll be like 340. So yeah, they automatically pull it out. But that cover is just it's a signature cover.
Oh no, it is. I'm looking at it now. I'm just curious what that book goes for. So let's take a look real quick. See what that book. What? So I'm looking at a price. CGC, once again, for people that haven't been with us before, is a book that is in a slab. It's in a plastic case, and it was officially graded. So the higher the grade, it goes from 1 to 10, or O to 10, 10 being the highest, 1 being the crappiest. It looks like a 9.4 CGC is about $159.
Yeah, it's creeping up. Right. It's creeping up. There's yeah, but it's just an iconic cover. Unlike Herb Trimp, you're in like Hulk 181,
right? First appearance,
which is the first appearance of Wolverine.
Second appearance, technically.
Technically, yes. Hulk 180 is technically, but all the collectors do the Hulk 181 as his first full appearance.
That just bothers me because I'm venting. We should do a section called the vent. And I'm not talking about a big latte from Starbucks. Because Hulk 181, like Dennis said, is the issue where Wolverine is in the whole book. He fights the Hulk, and the Hulk's fighting Wendigo. So it's like this big three-way fight, whatever. That's the one that's worth the most because it's the first appearance, I'm using air quotes, of Wolverine. Now, technically, Hulk 180, the issue before that, the last page of the book is a full figure shot of Wolverine leaping at the reader. So you see his full body. To me, that's his technical first appearance and should cost more. I could understand if in Hulk 180, they just showed him in Wolverine in silhouette or just a close-up of his face. Something like that, just a partial shot. Because then you're going, well, it's not his first technical full appearance because you don't see his full body or anything.
They have what they...
In Hulk 180, you literally see his full body. That is his first full appearance.
Okay, so this is a big topic. So there's a first full appearance, and they have what they call a first cameo. So we'll go into X Factor.
Call that a cameo?
So we'll go on to X Factor. So X Factor 5 and 6 is the first appearances of Apocalypse. All right. So for those of you who have seen the movie or read the books, Apocalypse is one of the big bads from the X-Men universe. He's got a cameo, which means he appears in the last scene of the last page of the book. And that's his cameo. So he technically makes his first appearance, but does nothing. And sometimes the character's not even named in it. You'll just see a shadow or something in
But in X Factor number 5, what do you actually see of Apocalypse?
Just part of him in the back. The full first appearance where he's actually named and everything is actually 6. So as a collector, are you going to go? Right. You can go, 5 or 6. You really need both in order to say you got it. In Hulk, it's 180 and 181. You technically need both to cover your bases. The black suit of Spider-Man, which then later becomes Venom, that's an entire web of that kind of stuff.
Secret Wars 8.
Secret War, that's his first appearance of the black suit.
Right.
But then I don't
have a problem with Okay, well, go ahead.
Yeah. So then you've actually got Amazing Spider-Man 299 and then 300, which 300 is considered the first full Venom. 299 is the first cameo. It's the exact same thing where he's just done like part of the last scene or the last frame.
Right, but see, I distinguish that because Marvel's Superhero Secret Wars #8 is the first black suit. That makes sense. It's not Venom. He was never Venom. It's just the first black suit. And then going to those Spider-Mans, I totally have no problem with saying 300 is the first appearance of Venom because you see him in full.
Right.
If it's just a part of the body, I wouldn't call that a first appearance either. But Wolverine, once again, Hulk 180, it's full figure, in costume, no shadow. You see him, and he's named, if I remember correctly.
Well, that was my question now. What did it say? I am the Wolverine.
Did it? I'm asking, do you know?
I'm trying to remember. It has been a while since we looked it up.
We have Google right here. Let's find out. And while I'm doing that, we'll talk about we were talking X-Men stuff. So when you think X-Men, who do you think for your X-Men artist? Who is it?
Oh, again, so I've got to preface that as well. Again, it's not an easy answer for me. So when I have to look at it as a team. Okay, I have to look at it as a team. The creator team. Because Claremont, Cochran, Byrne, because there's overlap in there. But for me, it's one incredibly long, continuous, well-oiled machine from start to finish. So I have to say the three together as a team, that is my... Now, there's no such thing as bad X-Men in my view. I love the Jim Lee. I love the original, the Stan Lee stuff, the first stuff. But for me, that run of the Dark Phoenix and the entire Phoenix saga and then, dealing with the Hellfire Club and everything, that combo for me is the epitome of X-Men.
Okay, see, I think, I appreciate Byrne, but the funny thing is, when I started buying X-Men, it was after he already left the book, so I didn't discover it until later. So the bulk of the issues I bought as a fan, it was Paul Smith. Still Chris Claremont, because Chris Claremont was on the book from like 77 till the early 90s. It was like a 15-year run, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, right after they stopped with the reprints.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, art-wise for me, it was a guy named Paul Smith. Great last name, got to say. What can I say?
Related?
Great artist, not related. But he was a great artist. I think he was actually a very underrated artist too. His style was very open and clean, almost animated looking or animation looking. His figures, Paul is one of those, he's another artist that just had this very unique look of his own. You didn't look at Paul Smith's stuff and go, oh, he liked this guy, or oh, he liked this guy. And that's how John Byrne is too. John Byrne, early on, he kind of had a Neil Adams influence, but few issues in on X-Men, once he got his feet under him at Marvel, you just looked at it and was like, man, this John Byrne stuff is really unique. The last book is, I believe we were talking earlier, Captain America. Mm-hmm. Is there a Captain America artist that comes to mind?
So for me, Captain America, I am definitely more classic oriented. So I'm going to go all the way back to Kirby and the one that I know he didn't do a lot of, but Steranko. Just because they're just classic.
They are, but like Steranko to me, once again, those three, Jim Steranko, fantastic artist, definitely left his mark on the comic book industry for doing really just a handful of books at Marvel. He didn't produce that many comic books.
Right.
Jim Steranko actually is also was an escape artist. Did you know that?
I did not. Yeah, and with all the times we've had conversations and he's very fun to talk to at conventions and everything like that. And he loves to tell stories.
Oh, yeah.
That is not one I've ever heard. So, yeah, this piques my interest.
Yeah, Jim, before he got into comics and stuff, he was fascinated by escape artists. So he would do escapes and stuff. I don't know any more details than that, like what types he did. I just know he did do escape artist type stuff. So he drew 3 issues of Captain America, way before our time as well. They were fantastic issues. I mean, everything Jim drew was fantastic. To me, he's more known at Marvel for the Shield.
Yeah.
You know, Nick Fury and the Shield. Because he also did, 2 issues of X-Men, I believe.
Yeah.
But for me, Captain America is Mike Zeck.
Oh.
Mike Zeck, John Beatty. Mike was the penciler. John Beatty was the inker. The first comic book I ever bought was an issue of Captain America by those guys, and I picked up every issue after that for, I think, it was about 12 more issues, and then they left the book. So, to me, I think Zeck. Of course, I think Kirby, but those are all guys, just like Steranko, I got into, after, after the book.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, that's awesome. And what did you find out?
So I'm looking at the last page of Incredible Hulk 180. It is a 2-panel page. Actually, it's more than that. It's like 3 panels. But the 2 biggest panels on the bottom of the page, it ends with a very large panel, full shot. Now, I mean full figure of Wolverine. I'll post this image on our Facebook page so you can see it. He even says, this is Wolverine saying, why not try your luck against the Wolverine? And it says, better be here next time, Marvelite, since the Wolverine strikes but once. But in his case, once is plenty. So it's a full figure shot of the character. No hard lighting. You can see his full costume. He has name dropped himself.
Yes.
The Wolverine. To me, this issue should cost more than Hulk 181. I am sorry, hands down, this should cost more than Hulk 181.
And I would not argue that at all. However,
do you own Hulk 181?
I do.
I will buy it from you for what an issue of Hulk 180 goes for in the same condition.
And I laugh at you.
Damn it. Well, now I must ask, is your Hulk 181 CGC?
It is.
And what is the grade on it?
It's just a 5. It's a mid-grade.
Just a 5.
Yep.
I look down at you now.
Yep.
I wouldn't want to.
It was
garbage book.
It was one. I know you would. It's just one of those that over time. It's just there were certain first appearances that are tough to get, mainly because of the price. That was one of them. And
is it signed?
Captain Britain. No, it's not signed.
And did you buy it raw or did you buy it?
No. I was actually at a convention. And it wound up, that was one of the last books I needed before my X-Men #1.
Okay.
And I had a gentleman who walked up and said, hey, I've got this for sale. And I had just sold my NYX3 and my New Mutants 98. So I literally had $1,000 cash in my pocket. I offered him $1,000 cash for it, which was basically market value. He had said no at that time. I can get more for it here. I'm like, go for it. If you can get more at this show, by all means do it. But I guarantee you, nobody's going to pay you more than $600 here at the show. But my offer will stand till the end of the show. And sure enough, 10 minutes before the show ended, his head was tucked down. He came over. He goes, is the offer still good? I said, yep. But I'm going to ask you a question. What was the most you were offered? He goes, $600. And I said, yep. And I says, because I'm not buying it to resell it. I'm buying it for my collection. And I handed him the $1,000. So I have it. I didn't have to worry about it anymore. Yeah, I paid retail at the time for it. But I was good with that because I was done with my first appearances.
I mean, does a small part of you just as a joke to the guy wish you would have said, $600, that's the most somebody offered you? And he goes, yeah. And you go, $600? $2.50 is what I'll give you. That is higher than anybody in this place.
And then he would look at me and he goes, oh, you must be Andy Smith.
That's right. We will switch gears to talk about the Murder Hornets. Dun, dun, dun. God, I wish we had horrific music right now.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about a metal band.
Dun, dun, dun. Murder Hornets.
The Murder Hornets, which would make a great name for a metal band, I must say.
It would.
Or Killer Hornets.
If I could play, I would do that.
I could shake my head like one. I just don't have the hair to go along with it.
I'm good with the tambourine.
There you go. I used to play trumpet. I don't know if trumpet would cut a metal band. So, So what do we know about these murder hornets, Dennis?
Well, they originated from Japan. They have first appeared in, it looks like, in Washington State.
Here's a question real quick.
Yeah.
How'd they get here? There's no way they flew here.
No, I mean, migration's kind of hard. All it takes apparently is for them to come over or get stuck in something
On a truck. On a ship.
On a cargo ship,
right.
Or a plane. Don't know. They're tough enough where they could probably survive a flight. Even if they're in baggage or whatever. But they come over and then they reproduce. And apparently, all it took is a queen to maybe make her way over. What makes these unique?
Well, wait, it had to take more than a queen. It couldn't just be one. Because what's she going to reproduce with?
I don't know,
It's got to be more than one.
We may have to have a bee person or a hornet person, pop in there and post something on our Facebook page about this. But what's interesting is these murder hornets have an exoskeleton, so they will come in and they're natural predatory against honeybees. Well, our honeybees in the U.S. are basically that of the European honeybees. And
what does that mean? They're pussies?
Well, they got little stingers.
So
and they don't know how to defend against them.
They can't even fight.
They can sting them.
They are like the Europeans.
So let's go into comic books. It's like me having a dagger and walking up to Iron Man and trying to stab him with a dagger.
Okay.
That exoskeleton just goes doink, and then he just rips him. They can actually tear through a honeybee hive in like a minute and a half and literally destroy the entire thing.
So a murder hornet's exoskeleton is stronger than my skin. Is what I'm hearing. Because I could be stung by a bee.
Again, like proportional, I would assume. So you'd be like Spider-Man. I have the proportionate power of the spider and strength of a spider. They have a very strong exoskeleton compared to the bees. Now, what's interesting is the Japanese honeybees have learned to evolve over time, and apparently I was reading an interesting article how they somehow put them in a cocoon of something like wax or something, wind up actually putting them in like a little ball, and they move their wings and feet together at such a high rate of speed that it creates friction and heat, and they can actually cook the hornets alive in there, and that's how they defend against them. Our bees don't. They just have stingers, and the stingers kind of just bounce off. And they can't defend.
I know we need to get rid of these things. And one, if you haven't seen it, Google it, because they're like 2 inches long. So I'm not allergic to bees, not allergic to wasps, not allergic to any of that stuff. But I'm a big puss. So when I'm walking into my house in the summer and I see a bee, it could be a carpenter bee, which they don't even mess with people. And I pretty much scream like a little girl.
I think the audience knows that from your hangnail story.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a big puss. So if I saw something 2 inches long flying at me, a murder hornet, I would definitely run for the hills. But I guess if the Japanese, you said, if they're bees, if they've been able to construct bees or whatever.
They've just evolved apparently over time.
If the bees were able to evolve, it seems like we need to just make a deal with Japan and say, hey, we need to get some of those bees over here to take care of the murder hornets. Because right now they're just on the West Coast of Washington, from what I hear.
Right. That's where apparently they have made their first appearance here.
And so they made this, because I saw it on the news too. So they made this appearance. If they know where they're at, obviously they don't know if that's all there is. But I assume just with the few they found or whatever, they're already saying, well, we're taking them out. They're not just like, well, let's just see what happens.
That's a good question.
I would like to think the experts in Washington State are like, okay, these things are definitely, we don't need them. Kill them. Just kill them. Get the big fly swatters and take them down.
They just hired Rambo. He's got his M60 LMGs in each arm.
He's just taking them. I don't know, man. I hear stuff like that, and I'm just like, well, remember in the 80s? Wasn't it the 80s with the killer bees?
Yeah.
That came up from where?
Africa.
Africa, yeah. That was the big thing in the 80s, was killer bees made their way over here. Then, once again, I was a teenager, or we were teenagers, so it didn't really hit my radar enough to look into it. But
I don't know.
Took care of them, I guess.
Maybe it's the DNR, and they I'm assuming they're aware of it because the story's hitting, so it's starting to show up everywhere. It'll be interesting to see what they do with it because and maybe it wouldn't have hit our radar as much, but since we're all at home, we're going, wonder what's going on for news today. Ooh, Murder Hornets.
That could be. Everybody's stuck at home. Well, hey, if you know anything about Murder Hornets and want to be on the show, drop us a line. We'd love to hear from you. Once again, Dennis and Andy Show at yahoo.com.
Yep.
And
something fun came out this week, so we'll change gears just a little bit.
Okay, what is it?
So which we won't talk about in this show, I finished off Star Wars: The Clone Wars. So the final episode, the final 2 dropped. Got to see it. Absolutely phenomenal ending. Leads directly into, for the most part, episode 3 of the movie trilogy. It was a great ending.
But episode 3 is technically Return of the Jedi.
Well, no, we're talking episode 3 of the prequel, which leads into New Hope. Oh. So it was, because this is the formation of Darth Vader.
Got it.
So the movie covers it, but this leads into the stuff before and just a little bit after. Oh. So there's it ties it in very well.
Okay.
Well, anyway, with that, the Mandalorian, which everybody loved. So we were like, well, we've been waiting for, the Baby Yoda, the child toys to pop out. Well, before the toys pop out, or actually the toys should be coming out, but they put out something pretty fun that was adorable we have to talk about.
Adorbs.
Yep.
What is it? Let's hear it.
Chia Pet has come out with the child. So it's Baby Yoda in his little carrier that's in there. It's adorable looking, and then you build your Chia Pet so the entire thing behind him is all green and flowery. And yeah, I think a lot of kids and fans are probably going to go nuts for this. I don't have a green thumb.
Do you need one for a Chia Pet?
I don't really know. I haven't had a Chia Pet since I was a kid.
And don't you think they could have made this one a little different? So instead of the chia itself, the hard part being like that orange color, and then the stuff that grows is green, wouldn't it have made more sense if they sculpted the stuff so Yoda was green and then the stuff that grew was like the orange color?
Oh,
Yoda's green after all.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah,
that is true. But
should have consulted with us first.
Yeah, we might have given them some insight.
We do marketing,
or not.
All right, guys. Well, thank you again for joining us. We will catch you all next week when we have some strange tales, weird news to talk about.
Yep, we've always got some great stuff lined up. And if you've got any suggestions, like I said at the beginning of the show, go on our Facebook or email us, drop us a note. Look forward to seeing you.
Bye.
Until next week, grab your 3D glasses.
Get your favorite comic books, roll them up, and put them in your back pocket the way you should treat comics.
Throw your pigskin up on the mantle. This is Dennis.
This is Andy. Later friends.